Hello and welcome to God's Minute. I'm Pastor Jonathan Conrad. I am the senior pastor at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Wilmington, North Carolina. I thank you for clicking on to this site and that you are joining me for a devotion today. We continue our week-long series called The Gospel Blues, where everybody gets that moment where they just don't believe like they do or they used to. They have trouble praying. They have trouble reading scripture. They have trouble talking to God or talking about their faith or convincing themselves that things are going to get better. And that's most certainly true in this pandemic that we are undergoing. So I hope you find some encouragement from these devotionals, because what I am doing is during this week, I am sharing with you scripture that I go to when I go through those gospel blues. And as I shared earlier this week, I am going through the gospel blues. There's a lot to soak in, a lot to do, but I also know that I've got to make sure I find time to work on my faith. And so I appreciate you joining me today, and I hope you find some encouragement from this scripture. And today, it is the story of the prodigal son from Luke 15. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" What a great story. And in the whole Gospels, it's one of those stories that has a beginning, middle, and end. And you find that very rarely in the Gospels. You see a lot of parables that Jesus teaches are very short and they make a point. But for this is a true story that musicians have written songs about. There have been plays about it. There have been movies based on this particular story. And I think what gets me today when I'm going through the gospel blues is that God will run to me, and that God will meet me as I'm coming back towards him. God doesn't sit and expect us to do all the walking. God actually moves. God actually runs to us. Now, something you may not have known, that back then in the Jewish tradition, it was uncalled for a father, the man of the house, the man of the clan, to run to anything. In fact, if a father would run towards someone, it looked was appeared to be a sign of desperation, and someone would lose face when it came to the society at large. But the father doesn't care. The father runs to his son who has now come back home. And God doesn't care about what society thinks. God runs to us, and God holds us. This may not be the exact same thing, but I remember going on about 4 years ago. I came home after a long day, and sitting on the floor was Kristen and then our 2-year-old son, Paul, who's now 6. And I sat down, and Kristen had Paul. And then Paul looks at me and he says, "Daddy." And he walks over and gives me a hug. Paul walked to me and gave me a hug. Imagine what that son felt seeing his father running to him to welcome him back with open arms. Now you can picture God running to you the same way. Wherever you are in your gospel blues, wherever you are in your journey, God is going to run to you. God doesn't walk. God runs to you because you are that important to God, and you always will be. Thank you for joining me today. Take care and God bless.